Alright guys, in this video we'll start to fix the front leg over here, which we flipped over from the quarter front to the side view over here. So we can start right away by doing the same thing that we did for the upper piece of the ear. So we'll find the entire leg over here, remove the interpolation, turn back on the motion keyframes over here, and I'm going to set a position in the center where my leg is just straight and not having any of these values in here in the scale X. So as I do this, the leg kind of just starts shifting from one place to the other and over in the frame right next to it. So I want to basically have 1, 1 in the scaling values, and then to the next frame directly after it, to avoid interpolation, I have -1 on this one. Now it doesn't necessarily move very nicely. You can see that it pops around quite a bit. So the idea will be to reduce the amount of popping between those two frames and have a nice transition from this leg into this position here. So we can do that using the pegs, the deformation, pretty much everything that we have can be used at this point. We'll of course use the onion skin a little bit to make sure that everything flows nicely and transitions into that final pose. So if I want, I can actually turn on the onion skin for just these few keyframes here to see how it's transitioning. Ideally, I don't want it to go back as it's doing now, so let's rotate it a little bit. See how that's looking. Already not too bad. I think we could probably afford to shift it over just a little, and already that's much nicer than it was before. The toes are looking nice, the rest of the foot is looking nice as well. Let's see how we can make it work using the first part of the movement. So we have this here. Let's reduce our onion skin and extend it over on the other side. So I'll take my entire leg and perhaps shift it over in here, starting off over on this side, and it also grows quite a bit thicker as it gets into the other position, so we don't want it to look too awkward. And the position that we've created here has the heel positioned over on this side, so let's try to get that to be just about the same. Of course, we don't want it to transition too much from this first pose either. So I'm going to go and rotate that. The foot will probably need a bit of work for this one here. So already the leg is not looking too bad for the transition. Let's try to see what we can do about that foot here and bring it over. Perhaps not quite so much. And turn off the onion skin if it's distracting you. So it's really just to get the core of the movement. We don't want to worry too much just yet about pieces popping in the front or in the back. We'll worry about those after. Well, that's already not too bad in terms of how the interpolation is doing. We could actually move this foot a little bit more. Make sure that you grab the entire foot and not just the top part. Remember, there's also the toes and the sole of the foot. So if we could make that perhaps a little bit more, flowing a little bit more smoothly. We'll have to do a bit of work between these two poses still, using the toes and the envelope, but still looking not too bad at the moment. So once I'm happy with those, I can again do the same thing as before. We're going to bake those keys into the values that we have. We have the toes that will need a bit of work, as I mentioned before, so you can go back in there, make sure that we try to get them to look as nicely as possible. So again, we'll probably have a greater transition in between those two poses because we're flipping the leg over here in its entirety. So let's go ahead and remove some of those keyframes and perhaps set the position of the transition to be a little bit closer to what it's going to be over on the other side. And that's already not too bad. We'll bake those. See our envelope and how things are looking here. You see that we have a pointier foot over here, so it's still kind of doable to move around both poses to adjust the angle that the foot will have. So you can swap back and forth between both poses, readjust slightly, and if need be, we can do the same thing again, remove the poses that come after if they don't match, or remove the ones before if you feel that you need to kind of recalculate the interpolation between those. So I'm going to do that for the entire foot here, including the deformation. And already that's flowing a little bit better, I find. So I'll go ahead and bake those in. And now looking at the entirety of the leg, it's moving around much more smoothly than it was before. Now we can fix the thigh a little bit. It is popping in front of the entire torso at this particular frame in time. So far I think it's looking all right by me, so we have two options for now. We could either bring the thigh in front earlier inside of the timeline so that it starts kind of moving in front of the belly, and it also wouldn't look quite as weird if the line over here was not cutting into the thigh before completely disappearing. So perhaps one thing we can do is move around this line, because right now it is also affecting the rest of the torso, as we can see here. So inside of our line we had the line and a mask that was cutting away the rest of the body. So we can turn this on, we can use the peg that is on top of it as well. So we have that over here in the line of the crotch, and we can go ahead and kind of see where things would work a little bit better. Could probably change the torso a little bit to merge into this leg a little bit better as well, but not without losing volume. So we want to kind of do a mix and match of both here. So in this one, this is pretty much the center pose, so I may want to just merge that into the rest of the belly and have that happen in the other ones as well. This is looking pretty nice. I don't necessarily want to change those lines. But now as we go into this one here and the next one after it, I may want to adjust those poses a little bit more as well. So at least so that the torso kind of remains inside of it. So I'm just doing one keyframe at a time, moving those a little bit to stay consistent with the line of the crotch kind of remaining at the edge of the torso over on this side. So that's looking nice. We can select the line of the torso now and just go ahead and make sure that everything moves properly over here. Readjust slightly. In those other instances, you don't want to lose too much volume, so probably a good idea to just keep an ensemble view of the entire thing. make sure that we have a nice smooth curves that follows through into the rest of the body. And when the thigh connects, we want to connect that to here and not the rest of the body. So that's going to give us a smoother transition. We can actually turn off the rest of the body just to see how it's looking. We can see that the line over here kind of becomes a little bit thicker, so we may want to nudge it in a bit further and make that a nice round shape. I'm going to do that for about every single one, making sure that the motion is going to be nice. And that's the main difficulty behind creating all of those keyframes and moving them one at a time, is that you may have some differences in the movement of your leg here. So you want to try to keep that to a minimum and try to prioritize really interpolating and then keyframing. So as for the leg here, kind of pops up a little bit over on this side, so I may want to really just slightly readjust the size of this piece here, just so it doesn't look too much like we're suddenly having something pop in front of the torso, and really have a more minor transition. And as for this part here, I may want to look for the part where the thigh starts cutting into it and either modify the thigh or the leg or a little bit of both, just as what I'm going to be doing here. Now remember, as you start nudging pieces forward, sometimes they will come on top of other pieces, so you may want to bring some in top again. So you may want to bring some to the top as well. So we've already positioned our deformation for this one, so I'm going to just do some interpolation between both poses, see how that's looking. Right now we should probably nudge this one over a little bit more without affecting the curve too much. And again, the deformation can be a bit of a distraction, so always best to just turn it off. See how this is looking. And that's actually not too bad. So we can go ahead and bake those keys. And now we have the full rotation of that piece. Really important, guys, make sure that you look into all of these other pieces here to make sure that the transition flows nicely into the rest of the character. And once we're happy with those, we're ready to keep going to the next part.